The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Greetings, Guardians, and welcome to Board with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage for games you play on your table and on your television. You can think of us as the Blink-182 of gaming podcasts. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network and a member of the Make Us Better team over on Patreon. I am one of your hosts, Kyle, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the guy who provides the guitar riffs for my bass to follow. Josh, how are you doing this evening?
Does that make me the person who believes in aliens or the person who created Boxcar Racer and Angels and Airwaves?
Wait, now I'm confused. I can't remember which one is Tom or not. You think
Mark is the lead singer.
Okay, so I don't know which one that makes you. That makes you Mark then, right?
I don't know. Well,
I don't know either.
That's how important Blink-182 is in my life.
Here's the sad part about this whole thing. I've seen them in concert multiple times.
Oh, then, yeah, this looks bad on you.
Well, but granted, that was like in 1999 or 2000, so that was a little different back then.
Okay, sure.
Well,
so you have a short-term memory?
Well, because, no, I just have one member of the band that I really enjoy. Because, while memorable guitar licks...
It's not either one of us.
No, it's not, exactly. So while memorable guitar licks of Blink-182 may immediately transport you back to when you first heard one of their songs, it's the ridiculous skill of their drummer that drives their songs forward and truly makes their music memorable. We have a very special guest this week making a return appearance and the guy we are counting on to make this podcast memorable. Callin Flores from Plaid Hat Games. Welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Are you a fan of Blink-182?
Actually, they're going to be friends of mine who listen to this podcast and get a big kick out of how much I don't like Blink-182. Them, I can already sense them giving me a hard time for it. They just never really landed for me.
I'm a big fan of Travis Barker, their drummer. I think he's very good. But
I'm the type of person where I have some really weird stuff in my Spotify, so I never if I don't enjoy a band, I'm not gonna give anybody a hard time for it, because you'll hop on mine and see some kind of weird indie band or Miley Cyrus, which is I have a huge passion for, so I'm not here to judge anybody.
The Climb is a really good song.
Okay, Kyle, let's not get crazy.
Just saying, there's it was very passionate. Can't blame someone for liking some Miley Cyrus. But hey, Callin, we're really excited to have you back on the podcast. This makes you officially the guest we've had on the most.
I did it. I was going for the belt and I got it.
You got it.
Awesome. Hey, so thanks so much for joining us this week. As always, anyone, if you have feedback, questions, suggested topics, hit us up at Board with VG on Twitter, or check out the awesome stuff that Josh is posting over on the Instagram, also Board with VG. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/boardwithvg, and we would definitely appreciate a 5-star rating over there. Long form communication can go to boardwithvg@gmail.com, and on all the social medias, we love when you use that hashtag boardwithvg so we can follow what you're doing, see what you're playing, all of that good stuff. Also, as of recently, Board with Video Games now has its own podcast feed. So if you're in the mood to pick and choose certain shows, ideally us, we hope, from the PSVG feed, you can just search us individually. And after some hiccups with Apple, because their stuff just always works, after 3 days, it now is available on iTunes. So we really appreciate you checking us out there. And finally, if you're interested in helping make us better, check out patreon.com/makeusbetter. And a big thank you to all the supporters out there who made that individual podcast feed possible. We really appreciate your support. But hey, we just really are glad you are listening. So enough of the housekeeping. Callin, since you are our guest, why don't you take us through some of the games you've been playing on your table?
Well, there was a little bit of I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about it actually, but Variety posted last week that Jerry Hawthorne, who is the one of the designers of our studio, he's in talks to make a movie with DreamWorks, I believe, out of Mice and Mystics. And I remember the story broke and he was like, well, I have to text my lawyer and see how much we're allowed to talk about this. So I think we're allowed to like amplify that is a story that's happening, but we can't go into any more detail over it. But anyways, that's led to me playing a lot of Mice and Mystics this week because my girlfriend never had the chance to play it. So we're running through the campaign right now where we just got destroyed on a mission earlier in the evening. And then beyond that, I've been, playtesting a lot of the expansion stuff for Guardians. And then also we have a new game coming out this month called Neon Gods, which is Isaac Vega's design. It's kind of like his revamp of City of Remnants, which is his very first game. So we have some demos for that coming up. So I've been, teaching a lot of that and playing a lot of that to make sure I know all the ins and outs.
Excellent. So I know you can't answer this question, but I will just let you know that Josh and I had a long discussion in Discord about whether we were excited about the writers who are attached to the project for Mice and Mystics or not. And like I said, I know you can't comment on it, but I just think we can. I just think it's a very interesting choice of writers to go with writers who are well known in the horror genre to write a Mice and Mystics movie.
So the interesting thing about horror in movies is that a lot of writers and a lot of directors, you'll see they have their start in the horror genre, and that's because the cost is so low to produce those types of movies. And so a lot of directors, you'll see they have some kind of weird horror credit early on. And that's good for establishing the rest of your career because it tells studios that you know how to work on a budget. So that I don't know if that's the case at all. I'm not even sure who the writers are. I didn't even know the story was going to break this week. It's like I immediately texted Colby and Jerry and was like, how much can we talk about this? Because we had some kind of inkling. It's mostly Jerry's deal because he's the license holder and everything. But we had some kind of indication, so I'm not entirely sure where it's at, and I didn't realize that they had already said that certain writers were kind of attached to it or interested in it.
Yeah, they had attached writers and a director already, and I forget the director's name, but it was the person who had directed wasn't it the person who had directed Piranha 3D?
Maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
which was huge inspiration for Mice and Mystics. So I mean that track.
Yeah. He's already worked with animals.
Yeah, that's true. Which, say what you will about Piranha 3D, that movie as a genre movie is really good.
Hey, listen, who would have thought the guy who made Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit did Meet the Feebles as his first movie? So
there you go, exactly.
Horror background is A-okay.
I think
Sam
I do
Raimi.
remember reading a little bit about they had on it in the Variety article, because when I hopped into it, I wanted to see how much they would talk about the game, and it was like all this information about the studio and about who might be the writer and who might be the director, and then it gets to the actual game, and it's like Mice and Mystics is a role-playing game from Plaid Hat Games, and I was like, cool, we got most of that right.
Well, it's variety. I mean, you can only ask for so much there. I will say, though, my wife is very excited about this becoming a movie. We are big fans of Mice and Mystics and have played through all of the campaigns and the expansions. And I know she's very excited to see, hopefully, this come to life because obviously we hear movies get announced all the time. So I hope this is one of those that gets followed through on.
It's wild. Like coming back to the game and playing it, like I said, there's so many mechanics that I know that Stuff Fables is a more refined experience, and I know that Stuff Fables has a lot less edge cases compared to Mice and Mystics, which is what Jerry was going for. He didn't want people to have the same experience of having to be okay, I gotta double check this in the forums, or I gotta check the FAQ, I gotta reference the rulebook. He wanted all that to be more contained. But man, there's just something about Mice and Mystics. I had forgotten just how much of a great dungeon crawl it is. And it's funny that that's Jerry's favorite genre. I mean, obviously looking at his body of work, you can see that, but he's part of specific dungeon crawl board game groups on Facebook. And he pretty much backs everything that kind of fits that, genre on a Kickstarter. So he's constantly getting he always gets the Zombicide and Massive Darkness and then some of the more obscure stuff. So it's definitely where he shines, and it's awesome to see how consistent it's been in his body of work.
Absolutely. So hey, Essen was last week.
I had no idea.
You had no idea. I was going to say, I'm assuming that it sounds like that is not a show that you went to personally.
Oh no, thank goodness. Only Colby and Jerry went to that one. It was, it's usually, speaking of Jerry, he's got more clout in Europe as, compared to maybe, some of the other games we do. So that's usually his show to shine. They unveiled the German version of Stuff Fables, and that sold pretty well. And then, he was very instrumental in bringing Andrea Mezzaterro, who's the Italian designer of Crystal Clans. He was the first person to kind of put hands on the original prototype of that. So he's good friends with Andrea, and it's always good to hang out with them and see him. And so Colby and Jerry usually have a pretty good time in Europe, and the rest of us stay back and are glad that we don't have to jump on that long flight.
Awesome. Anything else you've been playing that you want to talk about?
Board game wise, no, that's pretty much it. I'm kind of keeping it in the studio right now as we get closer to some of the other conventions of the year.
Awesome. All right, Josh, what have you been playing on your tabletop, sir?
Oh boy, it's been a day. My wife let me go out on a night without her. We couldn't get a sitter, and we had a friend having a gaming night. I was very surprised because she knew I would be playing games all day Sunday. She let me go out on a Saturday night, and we played. We're sitting around the table. We're like, we should play an easy game. We want to play a new game, and then a game we're familiar with. So we're looking at his collection, and we see Kanagawa up there by Yellow. And if you've been in a retail store, you've seen it. It has like a deer on the cover. It's a very unassuming, small boxed game. Man, that game has so much going on inside that tiny little box. It was very good, but it took us a while to get our feet going. And essentially, you're a student of a master painter, or you have a sensei, essentially. And it's a drafting game. Hold on, I just got a weird notice pop up on my computer. I wanted to shut me off. It's a drafting game where you're drafting cards from this really cool, like, it almost looks like if you've ever rolled sushi, like a sushi roll mat. And you're playing cards on this template. It has 3 rows across, and it's 4 rows across for player count. So you're filling up, we'll call it a tablet, just so I can get through it. You're filling up this tablet with cards, and it will tell you sometimes to put a card face up or face down. So sometimes you're drawing blindly, sometimes you're not. And you take turns deciding to either take an action and paint a scenery or add to your art supply, or practice, or practice your studies. So you pass your turn. And what that does is after it comes back around to you, you draw another card for the next row. And when you draw cards, you draw it in a column. So you'll now be taking 2 cards from the top down until you get to the third, where you have to actually put your knowledge into practice. So when you do this, you're deciding on painting parts of a landscape. You're going to get victory points for painting a continuous season, painting people, painting the same people, different people, buildings, etc. And you have these diplomas, which are more victory points, where you earn them by fulfilling the condition. Each diploma category has 3 different point values in them. And once you reach the requirement to complete a diploma, you have to either pass on it or take it. So let's say there's one that's like 3, 4, or 7 victory points. Once you hit the requirements to get the 3 victory points, you need to make the decision on whether or not you want to take that diploma. If you pass, you can never take that specific one from that specific area of the game, which is not something that you want to fool around with too much. I could talk a lot more about the game. I'm not going to, because there's 2.5 other games I want to talk about. But I picked it up from Barnes & Noble's like super duper clearance sale. So I got it for $8. I think it's normally a $20 or $30 game. But even at that price, I think it's a fun, challenging, beautiful game. The pieces are very nice. The box itself, nice and easy to stow away into my little tiny box collection. And surprising amount of challenge and detail. So we played 4-player. We all had fun. Would definitely play again. We rounded the night off that night with Codenames, which we hadn't played in a long time, which is still a fan favorite for us. And let's say my teammate and I weren't in sync, so we did not win. I blame her, naturally. And that was that night. And then the next day, so was our Gloomhaven day, our monthly Gloomhaven day, which was very exciting. And I brought Guardians over. We played a game of Guardians before Gloomhaven. Obviously, we'll talk about Guardians later. But we did play that, and then we got right into Gloomhaven. I did take a picture on our Instagram for scale in comparison between the two games. I thought it was pretty funny.
I saw that.
And I think this week is the week I take the plunge into a insert for Gloomhaven, so that's going to be an exciting adventure.
I have a friend who's doing a Gloomhaven insert campaign where every Tuesday of the week he works on his insert a little bit more, and he's hoping.
That's a genius.
Does he play the game in the meantime, or is he not allowed to play it until he finishes the insert?
No, I'm just joking. I did have a friend who he chronicled him putting the insert together on Instagram on his story, and it was like over the course of a couple days. And I was just like, man, I don't know, that's a lot of work, but I guess it does simplify things. Jerry has a copy of Gloomhaven, and he kind of got frustrated with not having a means to organize it. So. We've already played through a couple of the scenarios, so the office copy of Gloomhaven, if you open it up, is just nothing's organized.
Oh no!
There's tiles and tokens everywhere, and he's always like, "Yeah, if you want to borrow it, let me know." And I'm like, "I can't sort that out, dude."
Yeah, that would be a nightmare. We have them all in Ziploc baggies and everything, and it's still not nearly as organized as it needs to be. We went off on another adventure, and our road event to our location was not as favorable as usual, so we all ended up with 2 -1 initiative cards. So
brutal.
So that was tough to start to add in, and then we got cursed, so we had to add two no action cards to each person's hand. It was a rough start, and we went through this tunnel cave system where we were fighting all new bad guys, so that was exciting. Wolves and frost demons and some type of spirit. It was exciting. We had a great time, and it came down to the last turn. Both of my companions died next to me. It was down to me. One last attack on the last turn. I knew I still had 2 cancel attack draws in my initiative deck. I drew my card, and we beat the guy with an extra hit point to carry over. It was out of a movie, and the next card I had in my deck I had to check was a cancel attack. So we were very lucky I didn't just make 1 extra attack in that run, because it would have been very frustrating to have to do that all over again. I'm loving my time with Gloomhaven, and it's just unfortunately few and far between. I know we're heading to the holiday season where one of our buddies is in retail, so it might be longer than just 1 month before we get to play again, which makes us all sad.
That is sad.
But yeah, we'll talk about the other game shortly, but Kyle, what have you been playing?
Yeah, so the game I want to talk about during this little section is a game called Everdell, which is designed by James Wilson, published by Starling Games. This game was on Kickstarter earlier this year. Got it, not too well, probably a couple months ago, if I'm honest now at this point. And really wanted to play it because, I get games and I want to play them, but I just never quite got to the point of getting it out of the box. But then I finally opened it and started all the pieces out and started assembling the board, and you actually build this tree for the board. And I was like, all right, we're going to play this game. And the art on it by Andrew Bosley is stunning. This game is absolutely beautiful and has a pretty significant table presence. And they did a really nice job with the Kickstarter. They made some premium components. And one of the components that they made is berries. And these berries are purple, and they're spongy. And they're now my favorite board game component ever in the history of the world. Because I don't know, I just love them. They're absolutely great. But outside of looking beautiful, Everdell is basically a very simple worker placement game. And I say simple in the sense of that on your turn, you either place a worker or you play a card. Those are the 2 things that you can do, and that is it. However, the complexities and the interactions that are built within the game are significant. So basically, you have a hand of cards, and there's a of 5 that you start with, and then there is a meadow in front of you that has, I think it's 8 cards in it. And you are trying to build a city that is 3x5, so 15 cards total that you can have in front of yourself. And you can put out a worker that sometimes will let you get resources. It might let you draw cards. It's going to let you do those sorts of things. And the cards in your hand, you can either play cards from your hand or cards from the meadow. So the meadow cards are common between you and the other people. The cards in your hand are just for you. And all you're doing is trying to figure out how can I weave this puzzle of, okay, when you start the game, you have 2 workers and you're like, okay, all the cards in my hand and all the cards on the board have, they need 6 resources to build. Like, how am I going to get 6 resources and they're varying, to build these things. And then you start to try to figure out these threads that happen. Because the game does a really cool thing of, similar to what you'll actually see in Seven Wonders, that if you build X building, you can play Y character for free. Or if you build this thing, it allows you to put out this building or destroy this building that gives you the ability to play this other character. So now you're starting to try to figure out, okay, how can I maximize the resources I get, the order that I play my cards, what route do I want to go down in order to try to build this building in front of me, or this city in front of me, because the end goal is just to have the most points after the 4 rounds. And you basically put out a worker, next player goes and either puts out a worker or plays a card, you go around the table and you just keep processing that. The cool thing is you might eventually get to a point where you just can't do anything anymore. Like, you have no workers left, you've played all the cards you can, you have, with the resources you have left, you can't really do anything else. So then you can recall your workers, and that moves you on to a new season. But the cool thing is everyone else playing can wait. Like, if they still have things they can do in that season, they can just keep putting out workers or playing additional cards. So depending on how many players you have or what strategy you're trying to take, people might be in various seasons different than what you're in. And I just really like the idea of this game just continually moves. You never have to wait for what everyone else is doing. And the board and your strategies are constantly changing, because though there's not a ton of player interaction, there's not a lot of take that. There's not a lot of, when I do something, it affects the other players. Because of those common cards in the middle that are constantly changing, and because people can be in different seasons that give them different abilities or allow different things to trigger, there's still, you're still constantly having to try to update your plan and change what you're doing and making sure the engine that you're building is working well, and trying to adjust of, if, hey, I decided to go this route, those cards aren't available anymore, maybe this route's going to work for me. And it's a really simple, elegant design that has a ton of depth to it. And I really fell for this game really quickly. I enjoyed my time with it significantly. I definitely think this is a game that's going to hit the table pretty regularly. It's very simple to teach, but you realize that as you go through, the complexities of the strategy and the routes you can take and how you can build things are completely different. Every time I've played this game, the 3 or 4 times we've played it now, every time, my wife has beaten me every time, which isn't surprising because she's really good at games and I'm not. But all of our final scores have been within 3 points of each other. So she's won by 1 twice, 2 once, and 3 one time. So the scores are always very close. You always feel like you're in the game, and you feel like every single decision you make matters. So it's a really excellent game. I can't recommend it enough. I know it was supposed to, I think, become available for sale at Essen. I don't know if that actually happened.
They have it locally here.
Okay, they do have it locally now, but if you can get your hands on Everdell, I highly recommend it. I think it is an absolutely wonderful game. The first expansion to it just backed not too long ago, or just got funded not too long ago on Kickstarter. So if you didn't have a chance to get in there, have you played it?
I'm saying it sounds fun.
Oh yeah, no, the game is absolutely wonderful. You can actually play it. There is a single player variant to it. I haven't had a chance to jump into that very much, but it definitely is there's kind of the automatic player that happens. So you're playing against a automatic player that when you do something, it just triggers automatic things to occur. Haven't had a chance to play it, but if that's something you're interested in, there is that option as well. So Everdell, definitely recommend if you're into worker placement games, if you like games that are beautiful, if you like games that have cool trees on it, if you like animals, any of those things, I think Everdell is a great pickup.
That's one of the games where we have a network of gamer friends that are, usually if there's a big Kickstarter coming out, at least someone backed it, right? So that's one of the ones that just seem to make it through our net, and nobody in my immediate game group has backed it. So I've really been wanting to try it out. It looks very approachable. Yeah,
it definitely is approachable. And, one of those things art doesn't necessarily make a game, but it really can make a game you enjoy feel that much more awesome.
Oh, for sure.
And the art in this game is just stellar. It is such a beautiful game.
It looks absolutely gorgeous on the table.
So that's Everdell. All right. Well, with that, Callin, what video games have you been playing lately, sir?
Oh, we got some weird overlap in our video games, at least for a little bit. Far and away, the thing that I have played more than anything in the last couple of days, last week or so, I guess, is Dark Souls on Switch. I have never played Dark Souls before. I played Bloodborne on the PS4. I was waiting on the Switch version of the game because I couldn't decide if I wanted to get it on PS4 or Switch. And I was hoping they would come out closer to each other, but I toughed it out. I waited for the Switch version. There's some really weird things about it on Switch. Like, it looks like they compressed the audio the same way that the port for Skyrim and for Doom did. So it sounds really tinny when you listen to it, but especially like in the title screen for Dark Souls, like when you hit, like it says press any button, when you hit a button there's like this like very loud like sword metal on metal sound, and that sounds like somebody just like rattling change in a tin can. So it's very distracting, but it's definitely outweighed by the option of having one of these cool, you know, Soulsborne games on the go, like just being able to watch TV while you grind souls and get levels, or, you know, having a handheld version of it where you can just play it, you know, when you have a couple free minutes. It's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, it's my first Dark Souls, but I'm not like, you know, a stranger to the genre, so it's a lot of fun. I will say like a new fear that I've never experienced before is like fighting a Dark Souls boss and then getting a low battery notification.
Oh, no.
Like that is because you can't pause the game. I don't know if you guys know that.
Right.
Like, if you pause, you will die. So that's a whole new level of like panic when you're like, I don't think I'm going to be able to throw this in the dock and survive this fight. So that's been a lot of fun. I have the Spider-Man DLC in my hopper, and I was going to burn through it through the day, but I found out that I haven't played Spider-Man since I beat it, and I haven't started New Game Plus because I had Dark Souls. So like I don't remember how to do a lot of Spider-Man stuff. So I'm not sure if I should just like start a New Game Plus and go through it, or if I should just hop right into the DLC. I don't know. I'm not sure yet. But my Peter trying to swing around the city after not playing for like a month was pretty rough. So that's kind of where I'm stuck at. So yeah, pretty much Dark Souls and then Spider-Man on the horizon for me.
Nice. Well, for Spider-Man, I did jump in and I saw that New Game Plus, and I kind of was like, I think I just jumped right into the Black Hat DLC, and I kind of felt the same way you did. I was a little worried about how long it has been since I played it. So I think it's okay if you jump right in. It just took me a couple minutes to figure everything out. And
yeah, I probably just need to flex on the city a little bit and try and remember how things work.
Yeah, and now you need even more tokens for some of the Black Hat stuff. So I'm hoping that like when I start New Game Plus, it lets me get all those tokens again, so I don't have to so I can actually finish getting all my suits, which is a bummer that I can't get them all. Because I can't do any more of that Taskmaster stuff without throwing my controller through the window.
Are some really tough skill caps in those.
You don't have all the suits, Josh?
No, because it requires the skill tokens.
Right.
Even that white suit is 6 skill tokens to get, and I'm probably 15 skill tokens, maybe 20 skill tokens away from getting all the suits, and I've done every Taskmaster and gotten silver in every one.
I feel like, did you upgrade your gadgets really a lot?
Yes, all of my gadgets are upgraded except for the last one.
That would be why. Okay, because I was like, I have all of the suits. I'm like, I don't understand.
I completely ignored gadgets in a big way, and then near the end of the game, you have no spoilers, but so much cool stuff, and I'm like, oh man, I would have used this way more, but now we're in the last eighth of the game.
Right.
That's what happened to us.
Yeah, I'm really glad I got a New Game Plus, because I don't know. I might be alone in this, but I kind of like that the campaign is clocking in at 10 to 16 hours. I feel like it's something I can burn through in a weekend or a couple days. And because the game is so fun, and because it's so freeform and it's just fun to, goof off in the city, I feel like it's something that I'm actually going to come back to consistently more. And that New Game Plus definitely helps motivate that.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that. All right. Well, since I jumped in, I think did you have any more games, Callin, or
no, I was done.
Okay, I didn't want to just take right over.
I think I interrupted you a little bit because I was excited about Spider-Man. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. We love talking about Spider-Man. We're the number one Spider-Man podcast, apparently.
It took over.
And then play some video games.
Even Colby bought a copy of Spider-Man after hearing. He kept hearing everybody in the hallway talk about it. Our graphic designer Dave is like a huge Spider-Man fan. Like he has a signed poster from one of the comic book artists in his office and has like a big Spider-Man statue on his shelf. So pretty much everybody in the studio has been obsessed with this game.
Yeah, they really knocked it out of the park with this. They really did. I don't remember if Kyle and I talked last week about playing Black Ops 4, but Kyle and I did play Black Ops 4 once, and we're trying to play it again. I was out sick last week for most of the week, and I ended up spending a lot of time with Destiny 2 Forsaken, which I did not see coming. In fact, I didn't even hit Forsaken. I'm really I just finished the Warmind DLC that came out a year ago.
That's part of the reason I haven't jumped back in is because I did whatever the first expansion story was, but I never did anything past that. So I was like, I have all this other stuff to do.
Do you guys squad up a lot when you play Destiny, or do you do it more kind of like at your own pace?
When I played Destiny once, I played solo almost the whole thing. Destiny 2 has been pretty similar, but we have kind of a good support network for Destiny 2, but a lot of them are West Coasters. So for us, for me at least, I can't speak for Kyle, but when they're doing a raid, they just did a raid on Saturday and Friday night at midnight, that's 3 a.m. for me.
Brutal.
So I can't.
When I played the first one, I pretty much went through it solo, but that's because I think Destiny 2 was already announced and on pre-order when I got it because I'm kind of a cheapskate. But it's really cool because if you grew up playing Halo or all those the Xbox life, it reminds me so. Because I'm guessing at least it's some of the same Bungie people behind it, but it really reminds me of Halo. And the first 3 games, definitely they have similar pacing and similar feeling weapons and story beats. So I really like going through that game solo.
Yeah, it's definitely built to accommodate solo play. I had such a great time playing solo. The only thing that you really suffer is with strikes. You can't really choose who you're doing things with, and you definitely can't do raids solo. So eventually I did find some groups from Destiny 1 to do most of the raids. So I just building up my guy because sometimes those squads in Destiny aren't too forgiving about light level. So I try to get on par with everybody first. I don't want to hear it. You can't join our group if you don't have Galahorn anymore. I'm sick of that. That was very frustrating. And then I'll end it with, so I was just scrolling through YouTube today and immediately from a headline had Spider-Man DLC spoiled for me. So be aware that people are putting in their headlines spoilers on the DLC. I'm very happy about that. I didn't go back to see whose feed it was because I was so angry. So be aware. And then Red Dead Redemption 2. Kyle told me he was standing strong and we weren't getting this game. And then he messaged me 8 hours later telling me
I want to talk about this one.
He bought it. So I side. I know that there's a couple different conversations out there talk about Red Dead. Not trying to put anyone on the spot. I know some PSVG people feel like we've been talking on their behalf, and that wasn't our intention. So when I say my opinion on this game, it's my opinion. In some of the criticism from people is that they feel like it doesn't, it moves slow. It's methodically paced, but maybe my memory's bad, but I thought that's what Red Dead Redemption, the first one, was. I don't remember sprinting through, corrals or dirt roads unless I'm on a horse. I feel like one of the things I really like about Red Dead is that every step you take feels like a step you take. And it really hits my love for Westerns and the feeling of being literally transported into that environment. Everything that I've played so far, I love. The shooting is tough because you're trying to shoot a gun while you're being shot at. I get it. The stealth is clunky. If you're trying to sneak up on a guy and stab him and you walk into this a box, he's going to turn around. I like that. If you stab him and he, today I stabbed a guy, he managed to fire a shot off as I stabbed him. He missed me, but everyone else was alerted and I had to, take control of that situation. I really enjoy the gameplay of it. I've also had a lot of fun watching people's videos online of the misuse of cinematic mode, which is hilarious. But I mean, that also makes sense. They're putting you in this world that's self-contained, and it's like it's Westworld the game for us. Like, we're in Westworld, so all these things are going to act on their own. And if you're not watching your horse all the time, I went off the road because I wasn't watching the right turn I had to take because I was so like transfixed on the environment and the story that one of the characters was telling me. Like, I love every second of it. If I had to have a criticism, I don't like how they're handling who's talking to who and who is who. Like, I'm getting very confused and distracted when I have subtitles on, but it still doesn't tell you what character is talking or who they're talking to. So when I'm in a posse of 6 to 8 guys on horses and one guy's yelling 4 horses across to another guy and I'm getting the story on this character, I don't know who I'm learning about. And I didn't even know my guy's name until I got to like chapter 2. I'm like, am I Morgan? Who am I?
Which chapter are you in?
I just started chapter 2. I haven't had too much time with it. But of course, what do you think the first thing I did was? I woke up and then I went and shaved my face and changed my clothes and then saved the game.
So
because of priorities.
I saw a post online where somebody in a video game group that I follow was saying that this was kind of like the Last Jedi of video games. Like, it has this super strong critical reception, but then there are players that are just like, I don't like this game. Like there are fans that are just like, I'm not into it. So I haven't picked it up yet. I intend to at some point. I don't know if it's going to be this year because I've just got a lot on my plate right now, game wise. But Isaac pre-ordered it. Isaac Vega from our studio, from listeners that don't know, designer of Dead of Winter and other awesome games. So Isaac picked it up and he pre-ordered it via Amazon, and they delivered it on Friday last week. And I've been working from home this week, so I haven't had a chance to talk to him. And so I texted him today, and I was like, "Hey, this game has really strong reviews, which we knew about already because the embargo ended on Thursday." I was like, but it's got kind of some contentious critical reception from fans. So I'm interested to see what you think about it. He texted me back and he was like, "Yeah, I hate it. I gave it to my brother for him to try out." Like, wow, like that's he doesn't buy like a lot of video games like right when they come out. So I was very surprised for him to be like, "Nah, this is not it. I'm going back to Spider-Man." So I was like, "Oh, it's pretty tough." So.
Yeah, I mean, it's night and day from Spider-Man. I get why some people definitely have issues with it, and that's totally valid too. Like, this might not be the game people thought they were getting because it's not GTA.
Yeah, for sure. And it didn't click in my head until I was listening to you talk about it just a moment ago, where you said it reminds you of Red Dead Redemption 1, and I was like, man, I'm really excited for this game. Like, all the cowboy stuff. Let's do it. It looks gorgeous. It looks like it's got all these cool systems. But then I was thinking to myself, like, I wonder why I didn't play more Red Dead Redemption 1. And then I remembered, like, oh yeah, like the pacing was a little slow for me, and I got bored. And so I'm like, oh, dang, like, I guess this is going to have a similar issue. Like, which, I mean, like, if that's what you're into, like, there's nothing wrong with a slow game, but it's just, like, I definitely think that the pedigree there, and especially after, like, GTA 5 being the monster that it is and having, this giant impact on, the hobby, but very interesting to see people kind of shying away from it being a slower game.
Yeah, and I just got to the part where Chapter 1 is really a prologue. Like, I got to the part that really just kind of opens everything up to you, so...
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have way more to talk about, but what I liked already is that I like a narrative-driven game too. I prefer my open world games to be linear, if that makes any sense.
Exactly.
But it definitely starts with a linear story where you're essentially learning how to play the game. Like, a lot of games don't do that well. They don't teach you how to play the game super great, but this really puts you through the story paces while reminding you constantly what to do. And there's guys saying, like, don't forget to go back to your horse. You need your gun that's on that horse. What are you doing? I guess. So, yeah, I mean, I just really enjoyed it. And, like, apparently everyone else in the world did, because they announced today that, like, It beat Avengers Infinity War. It sold $782
I
million.
heard it's the biggest video game opening in history now, or
yeah,
I mean,
for the weekend, just for the weekend. It's insane.
That's wild. Like, it's obvious that, like, you know, there had to be some people that were pulled in from GTA 5, so I can definitely see, like, not knowing that this is going to be kind of a slower romp. But at the same time, the game looks gorgeous, and everything they showed for it, like, shows cool, awesome cowboy fun. So I'm sure that's there.
Yeah, and I'm early enough in the game where my opinion can totally change, so who knows what's going to happen.
Well, I'm interested to hear on future episodes if you continue to dig into it, because now Isaac has kind of poisoned the well, to use some cowboy parlance, at the office, and I don't know if anybody else is going to be picking it up there. My biggest fear was that I wouldn't have enough time to play it, and now, like, knowing it's a slower paced game, like, that doesn't change like how long it takes to beat the game, but I think it will make me kind of feel like I don't get as rewarding of an experience in a brief sit down with it, if that makes sense.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So this is definitely something I'm watching with interest, because I want to know if this is a game I'll be picking up this year or not.
Cool. Yeah, I will make sure. Kyle, I'm going to get right to Kyle because I've spent a good amount of time talking about games. So Kyle, what have you been playing recently?
Well, I'll stick on the Red Dead Redemption train, but I'll be brief in my thoughts. I think maybe I'm just a touch farther than you are. I'm also in chapter 2, but I think a little further than that. And, you know, unlike people who were swayed to buy this game because of Grand Theft Auto, I was swayed, and I told Josh this. He asked me, he's like, you know, you said you were going to do this. We said we were going to share this game. Like, why did you get it? And I happened to watch like 3 minutes of a live stream of this game. And in the live stream, there was an Australian Shepherd. And I said, darn it, there's an Australian Shepherd in this game. I'm going to buy it. So then I bought it. That's literally what happened. So if you put a cute dog in your game, I will probably buy it. So it definitely, I felt, you know, while I was playing this game, I was feeling really smart because I was thinking of all of these things about how I was going to talk about this game. And I was trying to make myself sound really smart and like edgy and knowledgeable about video games. And then I read some feedback and some reviews and people talking about it. And I listened to a podcast where they talked about it. And then they said everything that I was going to say. So then apparently I'm not that smart or like insightful compared to everyone else, because I feel like a lot of people have these insights. I feel like this game, I thought it was really interesting because there was a quote from, I think, EGM from their review that was making the rounds on social media that talked about, like, if you don't play this game, you're not a gamer. And I find that quote interesting, number one, because people were ripping it apart on the internet. But number two, I think is interesting because I actually think that is not at all true about this game. I think that this game is, to me, this is like the Academy Award winning movie, right? The average consumer, if they watch most movies that are nominated for Best Picture, a lot of people are going to be like, most of these movies are pretty boring. These are not what I'm into. It's not exciting enough. It's not holding my attention. And that's what I feel about this game, that this is a good game. It is a very good game. I have yet to have fun in this game. That doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile. There's a lot of movies I like that aren't fun to watch, but it is a very immersive environment. And the thing I always use to describe things like this is it's very crunchy. Like everything you do in it, like it's like, you're crunching through like and making this progress. Like everything is like just this little step forward. And I feel like I'm watching like a dramatic movie. And Colin, your observation about like sitting down and trying to make good progress in, you know, a short game session is not possible, I don't think, in this game.
Yeah, that's my worry for sure.
Yeah, I sat down, and I don't think this is very spoilery. I sat down and I was like, okay, I have like 15, 20 minutes. I'm just going to get a little further in this, and then I want to move on. I literally, for that 15 minutes, drove a stagecoach. That's it. That's all I did. And I put a wheel back on that fell off. Like that was the entire gameplay session. I was like, that's what I just did. I'm like, now I'm going. Like I just drove a stagecoach. That's all I did. And not fast. It wasn't even a stagecoach. It was a wagon. I guess I should say it was a wagon. It was loaded with supplies. That's all I did.
Well, on top of that, like I feel like the Switch has spoiled like this console generation for that type of experience too, because like there is definitely a value proposition in my head of, do I switch over the TV source, turn on the PS4, sign in, load my character in Spider-Man, or load my profile in Spider-Man, or do I pick up my Switch and hit the button and start playing right away? Like there's definitely like this trade-off, and now like I'm so worried of like getting into a game like Red Dead where it's like I know if I get into this is like it's gonna take some while just to get there. where I could be playing Mario right now. Like that's wild to me that that's the technology's at.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing too that I've had issues with is we're playing on Xbox. And Josh and I both have Xbox One X. And the game is beautiful. It looks stunning. I know some folks have issues with HDR. They're saying the HDR isn't really that useful.
Mm-hmm.
Game still looks beautiful. But I have twice had issues with the resume function, where the suspend resume, where I have lost entire mission progress.
Ooh,
where I have like almost completely finished a mission, had to suspend it really quick, run and do something, come back a half hour later. When it boots up, it boots back like at where I had started. And I was like, what? Like I literally hit the menu button to go home, shut off the TV, came back, go back in, and it like spins to like the title screen for the game comes up, and then it spins and puts me back at the beginning. I was like 25 minutes of something that I just done that I have to completely do over again. And it happened twice. So
brutal.
Yeah. Which, 25 minutes doesn't sound like a ton, but when you're playing a game that is as slow paced as this, that it makes it a little more challenging. I think the other thing they do that is really interesting though, and I applaud them for, and again, I don't think this is a spoiler, right at the beginning of the game, they talk about Blackwater, this thing that happened at Blackwater. They never tell you exactly what it is, other than it sounds like something ridiculous went down at Blackwater. Most games would be like, we're going to start with the ridiculous thing at Blackwater. We're going to have you do this really awesome, really over the top beginning thing at Blackwater, and that's how you're going to start the game. And Rockstar's like, no, we're going to have you trudging through the cold, running away from the thing that happened at Blackwater, and we're going to refer to it a lot and make it sound really cool, but you don't get to do it. And I think that takes some sort of gall and some sort of commitment to your vision about what you want this experience to be to make that happen. So I will keep playing this game. Again, I don't think it's necessarily a super fun game, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Like Spider-Man is really fun. It is a great time to jump in and go do things. There are times that I'm in the mood for that. There are times that I'm definitely going to be in the mood for Red Dead. I just will not always be in the mood for Red Dead. And I think that's kind of the big thing that sets it apart, but I will definitely continue to play it.
Well, I think the more involved a medium is, the more important that fun is. Like, especially for like the industry that I'm in, like, board games, like that is a weird intrinsic value that is so hard to define, but is crucial for a game to be successful. Like, is it fun? Like I've often said that, like, I think Isaac is a great designer because he's very good at identifying fun. And that's like a very valuable skill. Like, you could make a technically proficient game in board games, but if it's lacking fun, then it's going to be a tough sell. Now, the cool thing about board games is that there are different things that people find fun. So, like, if you're really into an economic hero, and that's the experience that's giving you. And I think video games are the same way. One thing that I think is unique about video games, though, is that the video games, and this is something that I heard on a podcast from IGN, I think, but they were talking about how, video games are sort of unique in that it's the only type of medium that actively tries to prohibit you from advancing in it. So, I mean, like, there's no book that like tries to shut itself on you, or there's no movie that tries to get you to stop from watching it. But any video game, like, the game is 99% of the time trying to stop you from, advancing the story, which is really interesting. So if you're not having fun in like the minute to minute gameplay, like, I feel like it's a harder sell for video games because the game itself is trying to stop you from moving forward.
Yeah,
I agree, except for one thing. Justice League tried to get me to stop watching it every 10 minutes, I think.
Accurate. Okay, fair enough. Exception that proves the rule. So, yeah, but anyway, outside of that, man, that's actually that's a really good insight on video games. Now I'm kind of, my mind's kind of turning that over. That was from IGN, like I said. Yeah, still. Oh man, now my mind's turning that over. Speaking of though, other things I'm playing just really briefly. Also playing the Spider-Man DLC. I think getting into it and just swinging around in it for a little bit, it'll come back pretty quickly to you, Callin. So I think it's definitely worth jumping in. And I'm also excited about the New Game Plus because I do want to play New Game Plus, but I think when I do that, I am likely just going to pretty much mainline the story. I think at that point, I'll do I'm going to go on patrol parts when I have to, but I think when I play New Game Plus, I will probably mainline it pretty hardcore. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is like, I think I'm going to be alternating between that and Red Dead. Like when I want to play something fun, I'm going to play AC Odyssey. When I want to have a little more of a really, immersive experience, I definitely will go back to Red Dead. So both of those will be playing. And then I know a couple weeks ago I had mentioned that I was playing Donut County. Busted out the Platinum Trophy in that. Still definitely recommend Donut County if you're looking for a fun little game to bust a couple hours in and looking for a cute adventure. Definitely a good time. So with that, on to the topic of the show. Way back on episode 41 of Board with Video Games, we had Callin on to talk about his recently announced game, Guardians, which is now available on store shelves. So, Callin, now that the game is in the wild and people are playing it, how does it feel?
It's weird. We're kind of in like this in between state that I've kind of been in since Gen Con, of like, the game is in certain hands, but until it hits those big reviewers and until it gets the signal boost from that, like, we're not going to have a huge amount of feedback yet. So far, it's been pretty positive though, and it's very cool to hear people talking about something that's been your personal baby for so long, and now it's in the world and being discussed. But it's been really cool. I've really been enjoying it. I saw that Josh shared the video on Facebook of Tom's unboxing today, where he received a box from Asmodee that had Arkham Horror 3rd Edition and Guardians. So like now I know that one of the biggest reviewers has a copy of it, and I know we sent a copy off to Rodney. So like the gears are turning, but just these early days of like waiting for the hype to build is very, very. It makes me anxious, but I'm very excited.
I was excited to see that when he opened it, and I was like, oh, I got to get on Guardians Facebook and tell everybody, because I don't know if Kyle saw it, but he's opening this box and he's like, ooh, what do we have? And he's like, oh, Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. Excellent. And he pulls out Guardians and he's like, oh, I'm excited about this. I think I'm more excited about this than Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. And I'm like, oh.
Very nerve-wracking.
Awesome. So and maybe you can explain this a little bit, Colin, because I don't totally know how this works. So I don't think the game's available via Plaid Hat store currently, correct?
It should be.
Okay.
It might still try and divert you to a pre-order, but if you order it now, it's being sent out.
Okay.
It might just be a matter of us, having to switch that over, or talking to Asmodee and get them to switch it over. But it's on store shelves. I haven't actually seen it in a store yet in person, but I've seen some pictures that people have sent me of like, hey, here's your game at so-and-so shop. So I'm very excited for that. We might actually hit up one of the local shops this weekend and see if they have copies yet. So that'll be exciting.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I bought it from one of my friendly local game stores.
Right on.
And when I bought it the day it came in. Apparently, they didn't get it quite right on the 18th. They got it, I think, a couple days later. And I walked in and was like, "Hey, do you have this?" And they said, "Actually, yes." It's they hadn't even gotten it onto the floor yet.
Oh, right on.
And I had purchased the copy, so that was pretty exciting. But I think if it's okay with you, sir, I think Josh and I are just going to talk about our experiences playing it with a little bit, and then you can tell us, kind of why we're wrong.
I'll hop in here and there.
Awesome. So overall, if folks aren't familiar, Guardians is basically, I look at it as a 1v1 card game, hand management, variable player powers. And in some ways, because of where I came from, I always associate these games back to Magic the Gathering. And I think about, while I'm playing them, how does this relate to Magic, and how am I, going to create characters, or how am I going to think about this in relation to that? And to me, this feels a lot like playing Sealed Deck, where, similar to, other shuffle games, most commonly, people think of Smash Up, you're kind of figuring out what factions do you want to put together. In this, you have a draft from different heroes that you're trying to pick ones that you feel are going to hopefully work best together. And you take turns drafting those heroes against your opponent. You take the special decks for each of those heroes, along with a general starting deck, shuffle that all together, and then you start playing some battling over locations that are set out in the table between you. You move your heroes between those locations, use your card powers to go ahead, try to mess up your opponent as best you can, give them a hard time, and take over enough locations and score enough location points to win. Very crude overview of the game. The thing I really like about this game, when I started playing it, is that I feel like, and I think maybe this is actually, I'm going to start with a question. How do you play test something like this? Because I started playing it and I had the characters and I just did with what the rule book suggested to start with. And everything fit really good. It seemed really nice. I was like, yeah, this feels really good to play. But how do you go about, because I can't imagine that you play tested every single possible combination of groups versus every other possible combination of groups, but everything felt good. Like, I didn't feel there was anything that was overpowered. I didn't think, in the 4 games that I've played so far, nothing felt overpowered. Nothing felt like it was really broken in any way. Like, it felt like there was always things I could do. There are always things my opponents could do that I had to keep track of. But I never felt like I was absolutely getting destroyed or getting overworked, or that something was just way too good and I couldn't figure out how to deal with it. So how do you go about playtesting something like this?
So we have a playtester that we work with for Ashes. He's the lead playtester. His name is Nick Connolly. And I've learned a lot from him about playtesting while working on Ashes, because he is in addition to being like the nicest guy in the world, a very, very smart dude. And when I was first put in charge of playtesting at Plaid Hat, things really clicked for me when I heard him say once that playtesting is way more of an art than it is a science. Like the data is obviously very helpful, but the most important thing far and away is how it feels. Like you just said, like the character needs to feel well, the card needs to feel good. You need to have that response, that that endorphin rush when you play a card and it does. It resonates with you as a player of card games. It does what you expect it to do, and you feel good about it. And you feel like you influenced the course of the game and you made a meaningful decision, which is what we want to do when we're playing board games. We want to make decisions. We don't want to feel like the game is just, RNGing us out. So playtesting Guardians is actually like probably the easiest experience as far as the games that we've playtested. Ashes is definitely the most difficult. Ashes is pretty much like constructed play TCG gameplay. Like you need to every time you add a card, because of this damn system that Isaac came up with, which is so fun to play with. Every time you add a card to Ashes, you need to think about how it'll affect every single deck in the meta and every single deck that's possible, because there's no restriction on what you can play in Ashes. Very similar to how Magic works. There's no restriction to what cards you can add to your deck except for the mana cost. So the exact same thing in Ashes, which whatever dice you choose for Ashes, as long as you have the dice to pay for whatever the card is, you get to have that ability. So that's a very stressful experience. It's almost the exact opposite for Guardians, because that a hero is always going to have these X number of cards with them, and it's almost easier to look at them as like self-contained little modules. Now we definitely want to like get as much data as we can to see which heroes synergize well together and which heroes, if there is a certain combo that emerges where it's just like, wow, that's really tough to counter. That's definitely something to keep an eye on. But just given how the draft of the game works, it's not as detrimental to Guardians if there is a combo that really works well, because that almost like that almost enhances the draft portion of the game. And for those for listeners that, I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. For listeners that haven't had a chance to look at the game yet, like you said, you pick 3 heroes to make your team. In most games, you'll draft those heroes from a pool. So in a weird way, if there is a combo that is very, very oppressive and very difficult to get over, that actually in that one game will be kind of like, oh man, that was a pretty good combo. But in future games, it actually enhances that draft in a weird way, because okay, if I get X hero, then he's going to get Y hero. But if he gets Y, I cannot let him get Z. But maybe Z doesn't really work with my team. So now it's a decision of like, do I draft this hero just to deny them? Or do I let this hero stay out and potentially, have this combo that's very hard to get over? So I kind of got off on a tangent there a little bit, but yeah, playtesting this game is a lot of fun because of that, because it's very easy to take this kit and this little module and see how it works together. And it's very rare that you run into something that's just so powerful that you have to mess with the game too much to fix it. So I've had a lot of fun playtesting Guardians, and it's been a very, very pleasurable experience for me.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say, just to go off of that for the listeners, there are 8 heroes in the base box when you play. 10? Sorry, 10. Yep, you're right. There's 10, and you take 2 out. I was just doing the math in my head wrong. So there's 10 in the box. You put out the 8 heroes, you do a draft. After you decide who the first player is, you go back and forth until you have 3 each. So you're putting 2 back in the box, which is why I confused myself. But yeah, just so people know the context of like the drafting of heroes. So essentially, you won't always get the same guys every time.
Yeah, and that was really important when we were trying to determine, because every hero we add is more art and more cost to the game, and we wanted to make sure it had a really low price point. But even in the base game, that draft has got a little bit of randomness from the jump, because you're not seeing all 10 heroes in the game.
Right.
I think one of the things I enjoy about the game most is the fact that you have these heroes, and these heroes have really cool abilities. And, when you're playing your opponent, obviously their goal in a lot of ways are what they're going to do. And sometimes this happens on the first turn, is they will take out one of your heroes before you even get to do anything with them. And in a lot of games, that hero is just gone. But I think obviously with the inspirations and kind of the theming of this game, the fact that those heroes come back every time, I really appreciate that fact, because they're a ton of fun to play with. And if I didn't get to use them, I would be very bummed about the fact that I was like, hey, that person's really cool, now I don't get to use them the rest of the game. That's really disappointing. So I really love that basically they have a respawn, if you would. I really love that part about the game. And I know some folks have, and I was reading through the feedback on Board Game Geek and what other people were saying. And I had noticed that one person was like, yeah, it just doesn't seem to matter if you take out opponents. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you score points that way? Like, that's how you get locations? Like, I feel like it's, figuring out who the right people to take are in the right order, moving people where they don't want to be moved to, which is why I absolutely love Whiplash. Definitely my favorite hero to play with. And just really manipulating and getting those things in. I actually was like, I feel like that feedback from that person was like the complete opposite of like who you choose to take out and when you take them out and how you take them out is so important in this game because they're going to be back. And so trying to figure that out, I think is actually a big asset that this game has. But I've been talking a ton, Josh. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, my buddy said the same thing while we were playing. He was like, if I just come back, why does it matter? I'm like, dude, because I'm getting 2 points from knocking you out every time. So that's good for me. No, I agree with everything you said. I'm still trying to get my hands on the characters and how to use them most efficiently. I actually had a really good time with Harbinger, who doesn't move because it really throws people for a loop. And they're like, you just gonna sit there? I'm like, that's all I can do right now, my friend. I can attack you from here, though. So, like, I like the ability. Something else that's different from this game that a lot of people might not put together right away, because of, like, the smash-up thing we've talked about before, is you're often attacking people not even relatively close to you. So you really have to pay attention to everything that's going on. I can't count on both of my hands how many times I have forgot to use, is it Toxin? Is that the character?
Grave?
Grave, sorry. I don't know, I think it's Toxin. What I missed Grave's ability probably 9 times out of 10, not realizing I should be inflicting damage. And like, we're trying to play the right way. So like the first game, we usually are like lenient. So we'll let each other get away with things. But after that, I try to learn from my mistakes. But it was really funny because we were playing our game and I said to my buddy, I can just like message Callin on the Guardians Online thing. He might even answer right away because like my buddy's using Valkyrie and he's kicking my butt all over the place. And I'm like, is this right? Should you be this good? And he was. I just wasn't managing it well enough. And I feel like the game is so well balanced because if you just take a second to figure out why you're not performing well, you can immediately know it's you. You're the problem, not the card's problem. You're not like managing your resources or assets, or you're using your ultimate too early. All these things play into it, which for me, I feel like it just gives a lot more depth than maybe what you kind of look at first off. Like, it's not just another card game, to put it plainly, in my opinion.
So, Callin, obviously we talked a lot and are obviously heaping, we obviously both enjoy the game quite a bit.
Right on.
Obviously, like I said, Whiplash, definitely my favorite character at this point. My favorite location is actually Skyway Overpass. I always love those things that make you do things that seem like they're going to be bad and figuring out, is this going to be bad? Can I make this good some way? Do you have favorite characters, favorite locations? Are there things that coming across that, little places or characters that have a soft spot in your heart for them?
These are my kids. Don't make me choose.
I'm going to. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I definitely have favorites. I think that mechanically, it's weird playing the game as much as I have, and like I hope this is coming across because it's definitely the intent. And I think that you guys kind of hit on it a little bit. Is that while the game is pretty easy to pick up, I really wanted there to be like discoverable depth there of like, if you've played, multiple times, you'll start to identify, characters that might be a little bit over curve, characters might be a little bit under curve, and, the combinations that make them more powerful. And then, of course, there's the tactical element of like, what locations are in play and how does that affect the heroes. But I was really lucky to playtest most of the game with 2 close friends of mine. The lead playtester for the base game was my friend Christian that I used to do the Ashes podcast with. And then the lead playtester for the expansions was our friend Matt, who actually does the show with him now. So these guys are both very much into card games, especially Ashes. That's how we all know each other. And they, kick my butt all the time in pretty much any card game, be it, L5R or Hearthstone or, Elder Scroll or Magic or whatever. So these guys definitely have a good head on their shoulders for competitive card games. And it's funny to me that like the heroes that they think are overpowered and that they think are really big threats, like those aren't always the ones that I pick because like I'm not great at card games, so like I have fun playing them, but like I'm always like, oh, I like this character more, and they're like, yeah, he's all right, but like this one's much better, like everything's balanced. But it's fun to see like what top players gravitate towards. I think that mechanically I really enjoy Ronin the most. He has the lowest attack in the game, but that attack is amplified by every enemy at his location. So, if you can group people up together, then he can have some very serious attack power. And to kind of balance out the low attack, he has a very, very strong action card, which basically lets him attack for free and then ready, which is very, very powerful in the game. So I think that's my favorite hero at the moment. I think I've been having the most fun playing him.
It's interesting because, obviously, and when you were on the show before, you talked about how obviously Overwatch is definitely an inspiration for this game. And it is really amazing as I was playing actually Overwatch just before jumping in to record here, how much this game really does feel like a lot. It does feel like Overwatch as a card game, because like Josh was talking about, when you are playing someone and things aren't going well, it's really similar to Overwatch being like, yes, this isn't going well, but you're not changing your strategy of how you're approaching it. You're probably not using your ults as effectively as you could be. How are you, from a team makeup, like how are you utilizing all of your things? And then also from a balance perspective and talking about once you get better at it, most new players to Overwatch are not going to jump in and be like, yes, I'm going to be awesome at Genji, and yes, I'm going to be awesome at Winston, because they're both very complicated characters to learn and play well. But when you look at pros are always using those characters that seem like they're not good when you first start. And I feel like you definitely see that, thread line through this game as well. The only thing I struggle with in this game, and I'm sure it's just because I am not smart, and I'm sure the more I play it, the more I will get it. Sometimes I can't remember if something is in action or not, because there's a lot of times that when you're in that action phase of there's so many different abilities going on and so many different ways you can interact with things that sometimes I'm like, is this an action or is this not an action? I can't totally remember if I have to count this or not as one of my 3 actions. So that's the only thing that I sometimes struggle with. And like I said, I think it's the more I play it, it won't be such a big deal.
Well, we started a little bit with the iconography on the reaction cards and on the utility cards. I think utility cards are something that are definitely needed in the game because like they flesh out the decks a little bit more and they let us have a little bit more. Cause basically, before we introduced utility cards to the game, people were complaining that the turns kind of just played themselves, because when you only have action cards, then at some point you're going to identify, okay, it's this action. And this is before reactions as well. So we added reactions and we added utility cards to kind of break up the monotony of the turn. But I could definitely understand that, like, at first it might be hard to identify or certain things feel like an action, because in other games it probably would be. You know? Like
I did something.
Yeah, like the exhaust abilities and the utility cards, I could see like in other games it might feel like an action, but I definitely get that.
Yeah, but like I said, I think it adds like good depth and good, in some ways, even like thinking back to Everdelve, like, okay, think about not just this thing you want to do now, but think about like all the other things you can do layered in with it, with your 3 actions. That doesn't mean you only can do 3 things on this turn. I think that was just for me, and I think that's where some of the strategy comes in of using exhaust and using those utility cards and using those things in ways that maybe you're not thinking of, or there are ways to use them that are probably more advantageous than just what the straightforward ability or thing seems to be when you read the card the first time.
Yeah, and like the intent was to make sure that like we said before, like when you play a board game, you want to make sure that you have a decent amount of decision points so that you don't feel like the game is playing you. You feel like you're having a direct, impact on the course of the narrative of the game. So we wanted to make sure that like exhaust, utility, and reactions all kind of fit into these little bitty windows where you could make sure that you were, spicing things up a little bit, as opposed to just being like, I attack 3 times, your turn,
Definitely. Josh, thoughts, sir?
No. I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, just talking about the combinations and everything, it's a game that is really, it gets me excited to continue playing, because I know that, like we talked about, it's kind of impossible to playtest everything. But essentially, like, I know that every time I open up Guardians to play it, I'm going to have a relatively different experience, unless I like accidentally pick the same 3 characters that I did before. So I like the way, I like how it's playing out, where I will start to, figure out who I like and who works best with who. Like, I really enjoyed Ronin as well, because that ability to attack and ready is even more important, because once you realize you need to be ready to control a location, that changes everything too. All of a sudden, you think you control a base but you're exhausted and you didn't realize it until the turn's over. Or like the last game we played, I don't remember who my buddy had, but he like readied all of his guys and scored him like 3 bases because I wasn't paying attention to like what he was doing, and I'm stuck there controlling the gardens, I think it is. That's one point. So I'm like, oh, these things keep popping up and I keep jumping on them. I don't want to go to the location where I have to like exhaust a guy or take 3 damage. So it's great. It's like Cal said, even if you take the Overwatch part out of it, it's very much like playing a video game in the aspect of you're in control of all these characters, and while it certainly feels like a board game, because it is one, it really makes me feel like I'm back to playing the Overpower. If anyone's familiar with that series from forever ago, Marvel's Overpower series, it really makes me feel like I'm playing that, because you draft heroes, you have your own decks, and there's locations as well. So I'm just really having a great time with it.
Awesome.
I don't want to gush at you, so.
So briefly, Callin, I know you've announced the first expansion has been announced already, but I noticed when you were talking, you said playtesting expansions. Does that mean that there's more down the line other than this first expansion that has been announced?
Oh yeah, for sure. We're playtesting the second one right now. It's actually going to be wrapping up, I think, this week. Just depending on how many plays we have. There's going to be a little bit of a delay between the two, simply because with the expansions, we decided to go with a single artist as opposed to the team that we were using before, because we found an artist that we think that he really nails the style that we're trying to go for in the game. So he's done the entire first expansion, so we actually start previews for that pretty soon because it's coming out in November. So you guys will be able to see those soon. I think that he's an absolute awesome fit for Guardians, and I want to stick with him as long as we can. But part of that is that his schedule's kind of backed up a little bit, so the second expansion won't be coming out until like the first half of next year. But yeah, we're definitely keeping an eye on the future for some cool stuff to introduce to the game. I think that after we do a few smaller expansions, we will probably try to add a new location deck to the game, and with new heroes along with it as well. And maybe, kind of play with some of the more basic concepts of the game and add more variability to it. But the cool thing about this project is that, it lets everybody on our creative team kind of come up with these cool heroes and, work together to add this new cast to the, and the cool thing is that like that, it's kind of like, if you do a fighting game, or if you do Overwatch is a great example, that the way they expand that experience is by adding new heroes all the time. So it's just a great way to be like, we've got new people, we've got more and more awesome, interesting, and dynamic characters coming into the mix, and the cool abilities they bring with them. And it also lets me like just daydream up like the weirdest stuff I can think of. Like, hey, what if we had like a time traveling person that's going to be doing all sorts of cool effects and stuff. So a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, Overwatch already took a hamster and a ball, so that's unfortunate. There,
I had that written down for so long. Like hamster with machine guns and a ball. They got me. I don't know if I told you guys this last time, but when we were working on the game the first time around, I hadn't. I was working on like the high concept of the game, but I hadn't played Overwatch yet. But I was definitely inspired by like how the system had been described to me. So I was like, I want to have a kind of a generic robot character in the game. And I told my friends, I was like, hey, what if instead of him having the normal set of cards, he had like cards that would put him in like in a turret mode and cards that would put him in like an attack mode or a mobile mode. And they were like, you really got to play Overwatch. Like, you don't work on anything else.
Oh man. Awesome. Well, hey, we definitely have a lot of questions from listeners, but before we get to that, and this will be a little bit out of order, obviously, after when you were back on the podcast, Plaid Hat was in the midst of announcing a whole bunch of games that were going to be coming out, some later this year, some I think maybe early next year. Is there anything else you want to talk about just in regards to those announcements, to games that Plaid Hat has in the hopper? Anything else you want to plug about that?
Well, like I said before, Neon Gods, we're in the middle of previews for right now. This is a really awesome, really dynamic and mechanically very tight area control game from Isaac Vega. The base mechanics are all very easy to grasp. Basically, you take on the role of one of these four gangs in the city. And they all kind of have like a retro futurism vibe to them. So you pick one of these gangs and you start out with a deck of cards. Every card in the game is pretty much every card in the game is a gang member that you add to your little group. So you'll draft new gang members, and every time you draft a new one, you'll put another miniature on the board to show that your gang has actually grown. And then you can also build structures in the city. You can attack each other. You can attack the Andes, which are the android cops basically that are running the city. You can play cards against your opponent. There's a really fast dynamic combat system in it where basically you pick a couple characters from your hand and they each have a die color associated with them. So if I pick 2 greens and a red, those are the dice that I'm rolling into combat. So that game is really cool. It's going to be hitting stores pretty soon here. It's actually like a re-implementation of City of Remnants, like I said before, which is Isaac's very first game. So it was a really fun passion project for us to work on to make this really silly looking and really colorful game. The dice are like wildly colorful. The miniatures are wildly colorful. I do a lot of our social media, and it's been really fun to like take pictures of this game or post art for it because it's just like so off the wall and weird. So Neon Gods is the next thing that we have coming out, and it's a lot of fun. And then from there, later on in the year, we have Comanauts, which is Jerry's next storybook game, which we've done a little bit of information about, but we'll have previews soon. And then we also have Gen 7, which is our second ever Crossroads game, which is kind of like a spiritual successor to Dead of Winter in some ways. So we're very excited about that one. And both those games will have more information, in the coming weeks as we start preview articles for them.
Okay, I want to, I don't know if you'll remember this, but back when you said, hey, keep a lookout for, these next announcements, I was like, man, if you guys announce another Crossroads game, I'm going to be thrilled. And then you announced Gen 7 and I was thrilled.
Yeah.
And I saw the player count and my heart hurt a little bit. So I have a quick question that maybe you can or maybe you cannot answer. I know the game is 3 to 4 players. The problem is I don't have any friends. That's the problem I run into. Do you think, and if you say you can't answer that, this is okay. Is this a game where if it was 2 players controlling 2 characters, that this might work?
Let me double check. Let me do some mental inventory here. I think that it's totally doable. I think it's doable in the same way that Pandemic Legacy is.
Okay.
There are certain elements in the game that really build off of your interaction with their characters in a big way. But at the core gameplay of this game is a very tight and very well thought out mechanical co-op game. So I think that as long as you still have the experience of like players working together to try and overcome a goal, there will be some diffusion as far as, having your own narrative experience versus having the experience of, 2 characters, basically. I think it's doable, but I think it's doable in the same way that Pandemic Legacy, in that I don't think I'd recommend it as the ideal way to experience it, but if that's the only option you have, I totally get that. I will say that it's you're running a pretty not complex, but you're running a pretty expansive like dashboard in the game for each character. So that might be something that kind of turns folks off of like, I'm always like the biggest, what's the word? Like I'm always a big downer on having to multiple hand stuff in co-op games. Like I have a hard time playing too much Arkham because I don't like running 2 decks at a time. The only game like I really enjoy doing that with is Aeon's End, because it's like a deck builder, so it's just that one hand, So if that's something that you struggle with in playing co-op games or playing games with multiple characters, I guess that might be something to consider. But I still think you'll get a really cool experience and a really cool story out of it. So it's definitely a lot to explore there.
Awesome. Well, maybe I'll have to find a friend. Maybe that's what my goal will have to be before Gen 7 comes out. I'll have to make one new friend who wants to play a game with me.
I kept saying with Guardians that like I wanted to build this game where you didn't have to convince your friends to buy into the game. Like you can play off of one copy of the game basically and not have to worry about like the full, competitive experience, because I have a hard time getting friends to buy into games as well. And Isaac was like, you got to stop saying you don't have friends on podcasts. One cool thing about Gen 7, though, while we're talking about it, is minor spoiler. I am in one of the Crossroads cards, and I don't want to give away because when Colby wrote it, he was like, "Hey, this is you're in a Crossroads card," and I was like, "Oh, cool. What's it about?" And then he told me, and I was like, "Well, that's an experience I've had a lot in life, so I'll let you guys find what it is."
Oh, I look forward to that very much now. And I'm also very, very excited about Combinats. I absolutely love Stuffed Fables and Mice and Mystics, so I'm totally down for whatever Mr. Hawthorne is going to put out. So I'm really looking forward to that.
It's a crazy system. Like some of the stuff going on in Combinats is just like very unique in the hobby as a whole. So I'm very excited to see people's reaction to it.
Yeah, and I love the storybooks. Like I think the storybook is so cool because
it's a powerful system.
Yeah, and I think we would way back in the day when we were talking about it, we talked about the fact that like even for Mice and Mystics, like you could create like almost like a completely different adventure like place, but still using the same characters, the same mechanics, and that's such a cool, awesome thing that you can do. Of like, you can really do a lot of things, really only limited by what your imagination is and how you want to implement the stuff that's already in the box when you create this book. Which, yeah, I think it's just such a cool mechanic and way to present the game.
And the book is going to function in a very different way in a lot of ways from Stuffed Fables in that it's not as linear because the game is meant to be experienced as you're exploring the different coma zones of Martin's mind. So you don't necessarily go through them in order at all.
Oh,
one thing I think is really interesting is that like in Stuffed Fables, you had the 6 characters you could pick, and I think you had to unlock one of them like halfway through the game. And I've definitely seen some people like, oh, I wish there was miniatures because the miniatures were, absolutely awesome in Stuffed Fables and in Mice and Mystics as well. But as far as the unique characters that you can play in the game, there are in the base game, I think there are 22, and then we're gonna have a promo which is a 23rd. So there's basically like 23 different characters you can go through this story with in a lot of ways.
Oh, well, all right. Now I'm even more excited about this game.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one, and that'll be a good solo game for sure, a good low player count game.
Awesome. All right, well, Josh, I know we got a ton of questions from the community. Would you like to take over and kind of hit Callin up with some questions?
Sure. We might have a couple of questions that have already been answered. If we have already answered that, just tell me, Callin, and we'll move to the next one. But we'll start with Paul, loyal listener, Paul Calico, says, so I've noticed a couple of weeks ago that Uno has a new version called Dose. I know it's kind of lame, but what do y'all think about Dose? And Plaid Hat answered already. I don't know if you want to reiterate what Plaid Hat said, Callin.
Oh, did we answer this?
Yeah, I said you probably should have saved that for the podcast. It was a good joke.
Oh, so I've got to assume this is Twitter, and this is what you got to know about our Twitter. Our studio manager Colby got off Facebook a couple months back, which is just like he just decided he didn't want to be on Facebook. That's happened a lot. It is what it is, right? And he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna hop on the Twitter every now and again. So if you see anything on Twitter that it wasn't you, like it's probably me." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So every once in a while, like we'll get a retweet or we'll have a tweet that I don't know about, like I'm playing catch up. And a really good example of this, and not to derail the question about Dose, but a really good example of this is that a couple months back, he randomly tweeted out, "We're now accepting applicants for a Twitter beef," and then he just logged off for the rest of the day. And like I have the tweet deck up, at my workstation, and like we're just getting slammed on Twitter by people just like trying to like goad us into a Twitter beef and saying like some horrible stuff about our studio and like making jokes at our expense. And I'm like, boss, do like I fire back or do like you just like lit the keg and walked away, man?
You just need Wendy's to respond to them all for you.
Oh man, that would be so good for like our brand though. Like, and that's the big. Like, I've been saying like we should like have like a tongue-in-cheek Twitter beef with somebody for years now because like it's so fun to like. That's the type of engagement that's so organic that people would really respond to. But no, I actually didn't hear the Dose joke. So
okay, that's good. I thought it was you. Well, I responded to that Twitter beef thing a while ago, so I was part of the problem.
Yeah, some people got us real good. Like there were some pretty good burns on there.
Oh boy, yeah. So what do you guys think about Dose?
I honestly know nothing about it. I thought this was a joke.
No, it's not. It's real. It's
I have no thoughts on Dose at all because now I'm gonna have to go look it up. I don't know anything about it. Colin, what are your thoughts on Dose?
I'm gonna be real with you. I think Uno's a great game. I really do. This is not the first like sorry, I'm tripping on my words. This is not the first different version of Uno that they've done in the last couple of years. There is a version called Uno Mod that I think is actually a lot of fun. So I don't know, but if it's the same team that's been working on Uno the last couple of years, I bet it's a good game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, I love Uno. It's a great just kind of relaxed, even like the old school term of parlor game, like sitting around the TV with a table in front of you kind of thing. So I'm a fan of Uno. I would try Dose, but when I see Dose, for whatever reason, it reminds me of that game Kyle told me about. What's the game that you said was one of the worst games ever, but you play it anyways?
Are you talking about Milborn?
No, it's a card game.
Well, Milborn's a card game. Phase 10?
Yeah, Phase 10.
Yeah, I don't like that game, but
I know you don't. I know you don't. I thought for whatever reason it reminded me of that.
I did talk about it on the podcast.
Similar.
Yeah, I did talk about it one week on the podcast.
Yeah, I think it might have a similar design. All right, moving on from Dose. 2-question Dose from Kevin Austin. So his first question, this is from our Discord, is for Colin. What's it like seeing this project in people's hands finally for you?
It's a dream come true for sure. Like I in like multiple layers too. Like I've always wanted to design a game. I've always wanted to like build a superhero pantheon. I've always wanted to make a shuffle building game. So like it's for a first project, I'm so happy with how it turned out. And you know, I chase the experience of having a hobby game. Like I buy into new card games, I buy into new miniatures games, I buy into, competitive games a lot, because I have very fond memories of exploring games like Magic and Pokemon back in the day. So like I'm always kind of like, chasing that same experience in a lot of ways. And I think that a lot of people in our hobby are doing the same. So to be able to create an experience that I think kind of fills the gaps that I was looking for, like it's this weird thing where it's like I'm super excited that Guardians exists because it's the type of game that I want to play in a lot of ways, which it's something that designers will say a lot, which is a good thing. Like you want to create a game that you're excited about, but I'm hoping that it can be that for other people as well. So it's been very cool to see the response so far, and I'm hoping that it only continues to grow and get bigger.
Awesome. He then follows up with any regrets in the development process? Anything you'd change or take back?
I think that there are certain character designs that we thought would be a loving homage to hero shooters like Overwatch or like Marvel characters, and maybe got a little bit too close. And at the time, like, I think that there was a discussion about like, well, that's okay if it kind of looks like Overwatch because that's the audience we want to go for. But I know that there's been a very small subset of people that are like, oh, this looks way too close to that. So that's a little bit of a regret for me, but not enough that I would actually want to change anybody, I think, to be honest.
Great. Cool. I mean, I agree. I mean, everyone, at least for me, everyone feels unique. I don't feel like they're borrowing from any existing characters. But
what's funny to me is like, as a studio, we have like kind of like this rich history of parody, and not parody, but I guess just like homage, I guess would be a better word. Like Dead of Winter is supposed to have a ton of characters that are nods and references to other characters, and like the game itself is supposed to like be a big, or be largely influenced by The Walking Dead, which is like one of the first types of like zombie fiction that focused on people way more than zombies, And then like, I mean, nobody's gonna look at Mice and Mystics and not think about Redwall because like that was a huge inspiration for it. So I'm not trying to sound bitter at all. Like I just like that's something that like we don't shy away from at the studio because like we love bridging the gap, in certain ways. Like we want to bring works that were influential to us into games that we're working on in a big way. So it's not something that like I'm embarrassed about or that like I have any regrets about. Like I love Overwatch. I think it's one of the coolest games to ever exist, and it was a huge inspiration. So
great, cool. He continues, what's the reputation like for fans or critics so far, and or around the office?
So like I said, we're still kind of in those early days where, you know, the big tastemakers are just now starting to get their copies. So it's been pretty positive. Like I think we're trending pretty decently with reviews on BGG. So I'm hopeful. I think that there's definitely some people that have said it hasn't landed for them, and that's going to happen, but I don't think it's anything to get caught up on. I think that the game will find its audience, and I think that there's definitely a subset of people that'll enjoy it if you're into head-to-head card games and if you dig the theme.
Great. Okay, and then there's after Kevin's last question, we have two questions from Lucas Rose. But Kevin's last question says, for Lucas, how can he play this game alone because his bestie Jason won't drive 10 minutes to his house to play with him?
Oh man, shame and Jason on the public stage like this. That's brutal.
All right, so Lucas's question. When designing Guardians, was there anything in the game, rule, mechanic, character, etc., you absolutely loved, but you knew you had to axe it for the good of the play experience?
Yeah, we wanted players to have these like little devices they would put on their wrists, and then you'd put the cards into it, and it would like project a hologram of the characters. But Colby said that's way too expensive, so there was like an early mechanic where like when a hero was knocked out, you would flip their card face down, and there would be like a beaten up version of them on the back. That I thought was just like a cool. Like Isaac and I were just like jazzed about the idea of like seeing the heroes get beat up and then having them come back. It ended up kind of like there wasn't really a purpose to leave the character on the board if they could come back at any location, and then that's 10 more pieces of art for each of these characters that just we couldn't really justify mechanically. So that's one of the things that we got rid of. But I always think it would be cool to have like maybe like a knocked out version of the heroes.
Cool. And he ends with, also, creating the lore around a board game seems incredibly fun. Designing the characters and the world around them, you could probably go on forever. During that process, how do you know when to stop?
I mean, I don't think that you have to stop, right? Like there are stories for all of these characters in my head, like there's a whole like chronology and them interacting with each other and interacting with the world that I tried to create with this game, and it's so fun to explore that. And like the cool thing is that it keeps me motivated to continue to work on the game and continue to try and like introduce new characters when I'm daydreaming pretty much about the existing characters in the game, and new things that I want to have happen and story beats that I want to have happen. Like one big part of that is like I really wanted there to be like this kind of pseudo time travel element to the game where people were unsure if a character was actually a time traveler because they claim to be, basically. And that led directly into one of the characters in the expansion, and like her whole theme mechanically now is like manipulating like time. Like her ultimate is that you get to take a second turn, basically. So it definitely informs it. I don't think that you need to be worried about overwriting or over exploring your world. I think you should be realistic about how much of that will actually amount to anything in real terms. Like if you are designing a game and you want to write a novel about this whole world, just be ready to face the reality that most people don't want to read that novel, which is totally fine. Like it's not a big deal. Like you should do it for yourself because it's only going to make you enjoy the work more and make you more passionate about it. So I don't think you should be afraid to like explore it as much as you want to. I've spent so many hours just daydreaming the different stuff that could be happening in this world, which is, it's not like I'm not like a storyteller by nature, but it's a fun aspect of the game that I've gotten to explore because of how character based it is.
So what you're saying is Guardians novel confirmed.
Oh, heck no. Guardians comic? I'd be so about it. I feel like it's a much more forgiving medium for like what we're trying to do. And like again, like I think that Overwatch did such a great job with their comics that like I would love to try and replicate something like that for a board game hobby, but I don't know how much of a demand or cost is there. I
don't know. Guardians animated shorts would be pretty great.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Isaac always wanted to do an Ashes anime, and I think that'd be like the coolest thing in the world, like to explore all those characters. And like the cool thing about Ashes is that it's like 99% fights. It's like one character versus another character, which is like a great anime formula in and of itself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, hey, Callin, we really appreciate all the time you've given us tonight and being so generous with your ability to hang out with us.
Oh,
so,
for sure.
we're going to kind of start to wind the podcast down as we do as of late. Obviously, we're clearly a gaming podcast, but we want to give, you, the listener, one recommendation, suggestion, thing that we're into that is helping us live a well-rounded life. Typically, this isn't going to be gaming related, but just kind of something that we're doing in addition to games. So, Callin, do you have something you'd like to recommend to folks that isn't gaming related?
Oh, 100%. I recommend that everyone go out and vote in the next week because it's important to do, and you should all do it. I don't care who you vote for, but you should totally vote.
I'm actually voting tomorrow because I am going to be in Texas during voting. And I can't vote in Texas, so I will vote tomorrow.
Yeah, a lot of people can't vote in Texas, actually. My state does a bad job at that.
Awesome. Well, hey, go vote. Absolutely. I fully support that endorsement. Josh, what do you have, sir, for a well-rounded life recommendation?
I mean, yeah, I endorse that too. Like, this is going to seem totally superficial. Today, we're recording the day before Halloween. You'll be hearing this today after Halloween. But something I'm enjoying the heck out of right now is Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. This is even something people who are maybe a little, I wouldn't say squeamish, a little scared of horror things, they can still watch. It really doesn't, it has scary themes and elements to it, but mostly, if you've seen the show Bloodline on Netflix, it's like a haunted bloodline. There's so much character development and family stuff that's going on. It's written extremely well. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a spoiler, but luckily for me, someone on Twitter said, damn you, jump scare in episode 8. So now I know to brace myself for something scary in episode 8. But for the most part, it's creepy. The acting is fantastic and the writing is top notch. It's probably one of my favorite horror series I've watched in a very long time. So go scare yourself.
Awesome. That's Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. My recommendation for a well-rounded life: host a small gathering of friends. I did that this last weekend, had a few friends over, not friends who are willing to play board games with me, but friends nonetheless. And we just hung out and we chatted about life and we chatted about nothing. Most of the people are folks I work with in some capacity, some are not, but we just got together, we had a good time, and we hung out and just broke some bread together, had some drinks together, and really just talked about life. And I think there's something very, very valuable to interacting with people in person, spending some time together, and just talking. We didn't watch TV, we didn't play a game, we just hung out and talked for many, many hours, and it was wonderful.
If you could host a small gathering of friends and have each of them vote on their favorite episode of Haunting on Hill House, I think that we could get all three in one go here.
That is true. That is perfect. So
definitely a long hang. Yeah. Everyone sit down for 12 hours. We're going to watch this show.
When Stranger Things season 2 came out, Isaac hosted like a 2-day viewing at his house where we all just brought snacks and we just mainlined season 2 of Stranger Things start to finish.
That's awesome. Pretty intense. That's awesome.
Very
I need to live where you live.
Texas. Then Texas. All right. Well, hey, thanks again for taking the time to be with us, Callin. Where can people find you and Plaid Hat Games on the internet?
PlaidHatGames.com is a great source of news and updates on all of our various games. We're also on Twitter at Plaid Hat Games. We're on Instagram at official Plaid Hat Games. We recently changed our Instagram handle for better metrics, but we'll see how that goes. There's somebody out there that has at Plaid Hat Games, and they don't want to let it go, which is kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. And then, of course, we're on Facebook as well. Be sure to like us on Facebook. We post updates for all of our games across, all the major social media platforms. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter at Cardboard Callin on both. So if you want to see some pictures of, nerdy board game stuff, be sure to follow me. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Josh, what do you say we wrap this up and take it home?
What a great idea. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Remember, you can find us on social media at BoardWithVG. Use that hashtag BoardWithVG. We're on Facebook.com/BoardWithVG. Just a little quick insert reminder, there is a Guardians Online Facebook fan page. If you get the game, have the game, are interested in the game, I encourage you to join that group because there's a lot of good chat, and Callin's in there a lot talking about what he's up to with Guardians, and we get a lot of good conversations going on in there. We're also boredwithvg@gmail.com. In replace of my plugs today, I am going to say Callin was very generous and supplied Bored with VG a copy of Guardians, which I have. Kyle went out, he bought himself a copy of Guardians as well, and I thought, what a great thing to do, support Callin, who's been on. He's been great supporting us. So if you are listening to this still, and you can tell me how many times we have said the word Guardians tonight, including that time, and send an email to boredwithvg@gmail.com, I will personally go buy you a copy and send it to wherever you live, of Guardians, that is. That's another one. And if you don't want to listen to the whole episode again, try and ballpark a guess. Who knows how close you'll get. The first person to email us at boredwithvg@gmail.com with the right amount of the use Guardians, you will get a free copy from me of Guardians.
That sounds really fun.
Have you really been counting the entire show?
I got a tally right here.
Oh, man. Look at you go.
We said it a lot.
I'm sure you did. There's your clue if you weren't counting.
Does that include saying Guardians just up to the announcement? Or if I said Guardians now, would that also count towards the total number of us saying Guardians?
Hey, you just added a few more. Till the end of the episode.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, guys. This is a lot of fun.
Tell the outro music. Awesome. Well, hey, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, Board Game Geek, all at Psychocross, CYCOCROSS. If you have suggestions for future topics, be sure to reach out to us on the social media because we want to talk about what you want to hear about. And remember, everyone, whether it be board games like Guardians or video games, never stop gaming.